Home is all about my childhood and how everything I encountered and experienced as a young person became a part of who I was. Nature, the things I saw, my family. So if you'll bear with me, I'll try and read the poem. There was a child went forth every day, and the first object that he looked upon, that object he became. And that object became part of him for the day, or a certain part of the day, or for many years, or stretching cycles of years. The early became part of this child. The grass and white and red magnolia became part of this child, and white and red clover, and the song of the feeding bird, and the third-month lambs, and the sows' pink-framed litter, and the mare's foal, and the cow's calf, and the noisy brood of the barnyard. We don't have any barnyards left in Brooklyn, do we, really? But when I was a child, we did. And the noisy brood of the barnyard, or by the mire of the pond side, and the fish suspending themselves so curiously below there, and the beautiful, curious liquid, and the water plants with their graceful flat heads. All became a part of him. His own parents, he that had fathered him, and she that hath conceived him and birthed him in her womb, they gave this child more of themselves than that. They gave him afterwards every day. They became part of him. The mother at home, quietly placing the dishes on the supper table. The mother with mild words cleaned her cap and gown, a wholesome odor falling off her person and clothes as she walked by. The father, strong, self-sufficient, manly, mean, angered, unjust, the blow and quick loud word, the tight bargain, the crafty lure, the family usages, the language, the company, the furniture, the yearning and swelling heart, affection that will not be gainsaid, the sense of what is real. The thought if, after all, it should prove unreal. The doubts of daytime and the doubts of nighttime. The curious whether and how, whether that which appears is so, or is it all flashes and specks? Men and women crowding fast in the streets, if they are not flashes and specks, what are they? The streets themselves, and the facades of houses, and goods in the windows, vehicles, teams, and heavy planked wharves, the huge crossing at the ferries, and he's talking about Fulton Street here, in Atlantic, where we have the ferries again, the huge crossing at the ferries, the village on the High Line, seen from afar at sunset. That's Brooklyn he's referring to, that's the village on the High Line, seen from afar at sunset, the river between, shadows, aureola and mist, the light falling on roofs or gables of white or brown 2 miles off, the schooner nearby sleepily dropping down the tide, the little boats slack-toed astern, the hurrying, tumbling waves, quick broken crests slapping, the strata of colored clouds, the long bar of maroon tint. You've seen that at sunset, where it's that little red, the maroon color? The long bar of maroon tint, away solitary by itself. The spread of purity it lies motionless in. The horizon's edge, the flying sea crow, the fragrance of salt marsh and shore mud. These became part of that child who went forth every day, and who now goes, and will always go forth every day. Thank you very much. Now, do you understand what Mr. Whitman is saying about how when you're growing up, and albeit the Brooklyn he grew up in was a bit different. You did have sea crows, and you had salt marshes, and you had farms here. This is back in the 1820s, the 1830s, 1840s. Yeah, a long time ago, 160, 170 years ago. So maybe most of you who grew up here don't always experience that, but I bet there's lots about the neighborhood, and about Brooklyn and about New York that you do experience and is going to be with you for the rest of your life. Everybody remember the first time you ever rode the train? See? You're never going to forget that. And isn't that part of the excitement? If Mr. Whitman was alive today, he'd be writing about waiting forever for the F train. Yes, sir. I'm sorry. The F train, you're right, every 7 minutes. Not that I'm a timekeeper, I don't want you to get a low impression. Yes.
You look kind of different than this picture.
I'm sure I'm much more handsome.
Younger?
Yes, I am actually a bit younger than in this photo. Although, interestingly enough, Mr. Whitman began to look like this before he even turned 40. So he was quite young. His hair was all white, and he always wore it in a long beard, a bit unkept at the sides, you know. He would not have won a contest for the best groomed man, but he affected that look and had that look from very early in his career, before 1860, which would have been, of course, the Civil War, the War of Secession, which Whitman was very tied into at the time. He got himself into a lot of trouble in his youth, and his poems were considered very controversial because he was an abolitionist, he was a feminist, he was all for women, he was all for freeing the slaves, and in many ways he was far ahead of a lot of people his time, and he upset a lot of them. But you know what? He didn't care. He was what he was, and he was happy to be who he was, and he was proud of it, and he said, if you don't like what I am, you just have to read more of my poems and then you love me. I'm sorry.
Would you allow us to draw your portrait?
Of course.
Single file line.
Is everyone excited about this? Do you like to do anything, young people? Should I put the hat on? Yeah! No, they want the hat. They want to draw the hat.
Single hat. Yes, a cow. Smokey, oh my god. Can we start?
Yeah, you can start as soon as you see.
Because what is your name? I forgot your name.
My name is Walt Whitman.
That's a hard name.
Walt?
Don't worry about the name, I'll write it up.
Well, if he was alive, he looked even You're correct, sir. You are discovering one of the ambiguities of the whole. Or what we call the lie. Well, Mr. Whitman comes and is going to live forever.
When he died.
He died in 1891, but he told people, I will still be with you. I am still alive and with all of you.
His art and writing are still part of our lives, so he is still alive.
Thank you. Well, if Mr. Whitman had been still alive, he would have turned 193 years old last Thursday. The 31st of May, 1819, was Mr. Whitman's birthday. When he was born.
Are you 100?
Nina, start drawing. Mark the top and the bottom, fill the whole page.
How old are you?
It's very exhausting being over 100 years old, right?
How old are you?
In real life?
Go for the big idea first.
Why don't you guess? Write it up
What
in the
is
upper
the
corner.
main
And if you get it right, you win a prize.
Do you want a glass of water? You okay?
Don't mind me. I'm 193, you know. You get a bit old. It takes its toll. Thank you all for looking so concerned.
You should get some water. How old is
I think
Okay, be concerned about your drawing because we can't keep Mr. Whitman here forever.
couldn't put me in a glass case like Jeremy Bentham.
Could you maybe read a short one before you leave, like the spider or something like that?
I don't have those with me. I
I
can
have
read.
it too, but
Oh. I see, place there, right next to it. Was that one of the ones because I had one crossing Brooklyn
Oh,
Ferry.
okay, that'd be great.
And should I do
Right
that
there,
while the young people continue to draw?
Oh, that'd be lovely.
Have any of you taken the ferries?
Yes.
Isn't that something that they're back again? You know, for years they didn't exist. They were gone. Now they've come back. And if you ever go down by Fulton Street, take the ferry there. Well, this was a place that Mr. Whitman knew very, very well. For example, he worked at the old Brooklyn Eagle. He was the editor for it in 1847 to 1849, when he was fired because the editor believed he was an abolitionist and therefore too politically radical for the time. But the very first edition of his poetry, Leaves of Grass, was published right in the neighborhood in 1855, and he wrote a wonderful poem called Crossing Brooklyn Ferry, which was all about the trip he would take every day, most days, from Fulton Ferry over across the river to Manhattan. And he always called Manhattan Manhattan because that was the name that the Native Americans had given it. And Walt was also a big supporter and big fan of the Native Americans as well, which he wrote extensively about. Okay, so I'll read a little bit of this while you continue to try to capture my essence. Up. And this is his poem about Brooklyn Ferry and the people he encounters there, and how he says that even 100 years later or 150 years later, the next time you go on the ferry, Whitman is there watching in the shadows. Flood tide below me, I watch you face to face. Clouds of the west, sun, there, half an hour high. I see you also face to face. Crowds of men and women attired in the usual costumes. How curious you are to me. On the ferry boats, the hundreds and hundreds that cross, returning home, are more curious to me than you suppose. And you that shall cross from shore to shore years hence are more to me and more in my meditations than you might suppose. The impassable substance of me, from all things at all hours of the day, the simple, compact, well-joined scheme, myself disintegrated, everyone disintegrated, yet part of the scheme, the similitudes of the past and those of the future, the glory strung like beads on my smallest sights and hearing, on the walk in the street and the passage over the river, the current rushing so swiftly and swimming with me far away. The others that are to follow me, the ties between me and them, the certainty of others, the life, love, sight, hearing of others. Others will enter the gates of the ferry and cross from shore to shore. Others will watch the run of the flood tide. Others will see the shipping of Manhattan north and west and the heights of Brooklyn to the south and east. Others will see the island, large and small. 50 years hence, others will see them as they cross. The sun, half an hour high. 100 years hence, or ever so many 100 years hence, others will see them, will enjoy the sunset, the pouring in of the flood tide, the falling back to the sea of the ebb tide. It avails not, neither time nor place, distance avails not. I am with you. You, men and women of a generation or ever so many generations hence, I project myself. Also, I return. I am with you and know how it is. There you are. See? So even then, 160 years ago, Whitman was saying Whenever you ride the ferry, I'm there. I'm still with you. And I understand what you are feeling. I understand that you have things maybe you're unhappy about, maybe things you're excited about, and that these are all part of who you are. And that we, as Americans, are all part of a great, great democracy. And we are all of us equal. That's what we Well, I hope I'm looking fantastic.
I will give you copies of all the drawings. Usually they do a wonderful job.
Very good.
Can you give us 4 more minutes of the post?
Poem?
No, from the poem.
Well, there's more, but I always
There is
like... Sure, but I always like that I am with you and know how it is. It's not a bad place to
No,
stop.
it's not a bad place to stop.
Maybe I could move on and read the ending. It takes about 19 minutes to read it.
Oh, okay. Get all the details of his outfit. The hat, the overcoat, the beard, the cane, the boots. Put him in his time through his costume.
I will pick it up again near the end of this poem. And he is talking about how exciting New York City and Brooklyn are. Because remember, at this point, there are 2 different cities, but they both border on one of the greatest ports in the world. And he says, "Thrive, cities. Bring your freight. Bring your shows, ample and sufficient rivers. Expand, being than which none else is, perhaps more spiritual. Keep your places, objects, than which none else is more lasting. We descend upon you in all things. We arrest you all. We realize the soul only by you, you faithful solids and fluids. Through you, color, form, location, sublimity, identity. Through you, every proof, comparison, and all the suggestions and determinations of ourselves. You have waited. You always wait. You dumb, beautiful ministers, you novices. We receive you with free sense at last, and are insatiate henceforward. Not you anymore shall be able to foil us, or withhold yourselves from us. We use you and do not cast you aside. We plant you permanently within us. We fathom you not. We love you. There is perfection in you also. You furnish your parts toward eternity, great or small. You furnish your parts towards the soul. And what he's saying there, I think, is that each of us have a right and an obligation to be most fully ourselves. And that when we do that, we bring joy to the world and we realize the fullness of who we are and what our soul is. So he's a very positive thinking guy, and he wants you all to go out there and have a great life, do everything you want to do, and don't be afraid of anybody. Be yourself. Is that fair?
That's great. Everybody, a round of applause for Walt Whitman.
They're all much too high.
And his friend, John Carroll.